listening to Everyday Engineering, the City of Madison's engineering podcast where we talk about infrastructure. Complex topics explained simply, from the water that flows down your drain to the rain and snow that drains into the lakes. By way the curbs and streets we design. City engineering touches your life in so many ways. Explained right now in Everyday Engineering. It's construction season and, well, it's always construction season, let's be real, anytime you might be listening to this. But we want to dig into a project impacting our community this season. So we're talking about Davies Street and Dempsey Road between Buckeye Road and Cottage Grove Road on the City of Madison's east side. My name is Hannah Mohelnitzky, the Engineering Division Public Information Officer. I oversee communications for our division. And today we have the project manager and engineer Aaron Canton for this project joining us to talk about his project, Davies Street and Dempsey Road. Thanks for being here, Aaron.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, we're hoping that, anybody impacted by this project will be listening to this and be able to hear Aaron and understand all the thoughts and process that happens. But before we begin, can you kind of describe what you do for the engineering division when it comes to road reconstructions? What is your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in the streets and paths section of engineering, and my role on these types of projects is usually kind of twofold. I'll do the street or path design, so kind of everything on the surface, designing the layout of it, the geometry of it, and the actual elevation grades for construction. Mm-hmm. And then another part of that is also being the project manager on these projects, so making sure that the ship is steered and it gets through the various approval processes and the public involvement process, and making sure all the other aspects of the project, like any sewers or lighting, that gets included, and kind of making sure that it happens and gets built.
And gets done.
Yep.
On time, hopefully, and there's no bumps in the road, per se. No pun intended there. But yes, I think a lot of people may think that, who are not part of the process, may think that, our engineers are just designing and that's kind of it. But the project manager part of being a municipal engineer, especially in our transportation, streets and paths design section of engineering, really requires some public engagement chops. I work with them a lot. I work with Aaron a lot, but they're doing a lot of the work. You're setting up, you're hearing from the communities straight on. You're accessible to the community. If they have questions, you try to answer as many emails as possible, about everything, because road construction is disruptive and we understand that. So there's a human here, and that's Aaron in this case. So, lots going on as a project manager in the engineering division when you're designing streets and you're designing bike paths and all sorts of things. So let's focus in here. So Davies, Dempsey, if we're zooming in on the map, this area is east of Lake Monona, just south of Cottage Grove Road. The city plans to kind of reconstruct Davies Street and Dempsey's Road between Buckeye Road and Cottage Grove Road. So specifically, Buckeye Road to Maher Avenue for Davies Street, and Dempsey Road includes Maher Avenue to Cottage Grove Road.
Yep, that's right.
So what is being improved there?
Yep, so right now, both Davies Street and Dempsey Road are what are considered rural streets or unimproved streets. So they're basically just wide streets of pavement only and grass front yards.
No stormwater. No curb and gutter.
No curb and gutter, no sidewalks. Streets generally older, degrading, pretty wide. Not a lot delineating, what's public property, what's private property, and, no curb there to protect the street from street plows, so things on either end kind of get destroyed and eroded over time. And so these types of streets are, generally ones up for major reconstruction projects to add in things like curb and gutter, sidewalk, along with all the underground utility stuff.
Yeah, what is in that area? So this impacts quite a few people. It's largely residential.
Yep. Largely residential. Yeah. It's in the Lake Edge neighborhood. So Davies and Dempsey, kind of one continuous street, is sort of one of the major sort of local neighborhood collectors for that neighborhood between Buckeye and Cottage Grove.
What's a collector?
A collector is, it's somewhere in between kind of a main arterial street, which is kind of your Atwood, Cottage Grove, in between that and just a local residential street where you're mostly seeing just local traffic. Okay. So it's kind of the street in the neighborhood that most people would use to get out of the neighborhood.
Sure.
Is a way to think about it.
And there's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Davies and Dempsey, it's kind of between 1,500 and 2,500 vehicles a day. But what does make this street and this project a little more unique is it also is a metro route. So there's metro routes today, and with the metro redesign that's coming up pretty soon, there will continue to be routes and actually a higher frequency of buses on the street. So that's definitely a high priority when looking at what the street's going to be to make sure that's accommodated.
Yeah.
And then another aspect is it is on the Monona Lake Loop route. So it sees a lot of bikers.
A lot of bikers.
A lot of bikers, yep.
Yeah, that's kind of a hot spot for biking in that. I mean,
Yep.
that side of town especially, and then as you get closer to the lake, of course.
Yep.
It's a nice space to be. Are you a biker?
I am a biker, yep.
Yeah, so you should know that if you're listening. Here, Aaron is here with you. When he's designing, he's thinking of you too, because he knows, what it means to be a cyclist in the city of Madison and how important it is to be able to feel safe and also just get from point A to point B on your bike. So I think the guts of it, I always call this the guts, underneath, the sanitary sewer dates back to what, 1952?
Yeah, to the 1950s. So definitely older sewer, and that's often a strong driver for these projects. We have to make sure that toilets are flushing and basements aren't flooding, and so that's a large driver for these projects getting started, replacing that sanitary sewer. And then in addition to that, also replacing the water main, as it's older water main in the area.
That's not always the case. Sometimes water utility doesn't jump in
Correct.
on these. So that's another thing that makes this different a little bit.
Yep. So kind of just adds another layer of more work to be done, replacing that water main. And generally it is good when you're ripping up the street and redoing it to try and replace everything underneath and make everything on the surface and below as new as possible for long term.
Rip it up once versus rip it up twice.
Yep, exactly.
Yes. What else? What do you want residents and property owners to know from you about this project if they're listening right now? So somebody lives on that path, that construction section. What do you want them to know right now?
Yep, absolutely. So anyone living in that area probably has been familiar with this project for quite a while now. It's actually been in the planning stages for, I think, closer to 3 years at this point. So quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a few public meetings, quite a few iterations of different designs. And the design ultimately that is approved and is going to be constructed this next season in 2023 is really a very well thought out design that's a culmination of like a lot of engagement. I would say, there was a lot of back and forth on the width of the street, the sidewalk placements, buffered bike lanes, a lot of things. And ultimately the design that's moving forward is one of a narrower street of just 2 travel lanes, a side path to really accommodate an all ages and abilities bike route for bikers, especially being that it is such a popular bike route on the Lake Loop.
Yes.
And then sidewalk on the other side of the street. So it's really going to be a pretty major change. But one thing I want people to take away from this, if they're hearing it, is this design is really the best design that accommodates all modes of transportation, which is a really strong goal for the city to make sure that we're safely accommodating bikers, walkers, transit users, drivers. It accommodates all that, and it also is kind of the skinniest design possible. So it has the least amount of impacts to people's front yards, to large tree removals, retaining walls. There are always impacts from construction, and it is going to change things and change the fabric of the street. But this is really the most minimal impact while accommodating all those people safely.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yep.
Especially when you've had a design kind of reach over 3 years. That's also not common for reconstruction.
Yeah. Not typical.
No. So it sounds like, and this is me sharing about projects versus actually designing, which I do not do, is we've had a lot of public engagement over the years, and we've changed how we've approached it, it sounds like, as we've been working through the design based on what people have told us. And that's a part of, public engagement with local government and construction that people, I think people miss that because they think our design is set and we're just going to do it. And that's not the case. Especially, this is a prime example of, designing, hearing from everybody, going back to the drawing board, hearing from everybody, going back to, a few things, because different things change. Policies change, people's needs and wants and all the things. So I guess, do you want to speak to that at all? Because I think that's a chunk that I really want people to know, being a public information officer, is that your input actually does matter and it does impact the designs. Even if we say thank you for your concern or thank you for your feedback, we do consider it and we do make changes.
Yep, absolutely. This is a really prime example of that process at work. There was, quite a long public engagement, and things were really slowed down through that process to make sure that what we're going to be ultimately constructing is going to work for everyone as much as possible. It's difficult to. Everyone has their own needs and wants, and the city has its own policies and adopted guidelines to go off of. So it's always difficult to have all those hands in the pot and figure something out that works for everyone. But having that longer, really well thought out engagement process, I think, leads to the best possible design and the best possible outcome.
Yes. So there you go. There you have it. I think anything else as far as timeline or anything else that you want people to know? Oh, disruptions. We can't forget the disruptions part. So I guess, what do they need to know as far as disruptions? People access, things like that.
Yep. So while construction is happening, the road will be closed to through traffic, which means that traffic that's not going to homes directly on the street won't be able to get through. But local traffic on these types of projects for people living directly on the reconstructed street, local traffic is maintained and people will be able to get through. Obviously, the road will be ripped up. It'll be largely gravel at times, so proceeding slowly. There'll be construction happening. But our contractors in the city that do these types of projects are really excellent at working with residents, at minimizing impacts as much as possible, giving people advance notice when they're going to be working directly in front of their house or replacing their sewer lateral or pouring a new driveway apron. Contractors are required to and really great at that type of notice. And we also have a really awesome construction inspection staff for these types of projects who are fantastic. They are really the go-between between the contractor doing the work and the residents living there. And that contact info for the inspectors will be sent out to residents before work gets going. And that's what I always tell folks to keep that number or that email saved and make sure you have that handy, because they're responsive and they're going to be the most up to date on the timing of things, and they're going to really be out there and know what's happening. So they're a really good resource to have.
I think that's huge. We have a construction inspection section of engineering. So when Aaron says our folks, that's actually in engineering as well. So, yes. And they're out there. They're usually out there. They got, some high vis on. You can spot them. They're usually walking, checking everything out, walking it daily. To check everything out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these types of projects, the inspectors end up getting to know, probably every resident on the street by the end of it, because they're just so interactive, and they're working on these types of projects every year in, year out. They know the contractors, they know the designers. They're a really amazing staff to have for this type of work.
Yeah, for sure. What else? Other disruptions? Anything, Aaron? Yeah.
So there will be water main replacement. So there are some water service outages for this types of construction, usually 2 to 3, lasting 5 to 6 hours at a time. Again, prior to any of those disruptions for specific homes, the contractor will give notice to folks. And then there are typically impacts to driveway access. So when the new driveway apron, curb and gutter, any of the concrete items a part of someone's driveway, whenever that's getting poured, it has to cure to reach its full strength before it can be driven over. And that can take up to 20 days. And so there's a period there where folks won't be able to access their driveway and will need to find on-street parking elsewhere on the project. And that can be difficult for folks if that is something that worries you, if you have accessibility issues or need to be accommodated differently. That's where I recommend reaching out directly to me as soon as possible so we can make accommodations. There are certainly accommodations we can make for those types of impacts. And again, reaching out to the inspector as well is going to be good.
All the key thing, Canton, ACANTON at cityofmadison.com. I just thank you for everything that you're doing on this project. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
I think this is a really exciting project. I'm looking forward to seeing construction through and finished. Timeline, we're looking at construction beginning, likely summer, fall 2023, and work will be going into spring, summer of 2024. So when it's all said and done, it'll be a pretty new street, but it'll be a very different experience for all users. I think it's going to be really the safest possible. It's going to work with the new metro routes going through the street, and especially during those summer months, the very busy Lake Loop route.
Yes. And in case you are wondering, it's taken 3 years to get to this point, it's a lot of extra work also for us. And so thank you for your patience through this. If you're listening, thank you for your feedback. Aaron, thank you for yours. And that's all we have for Davies Dempsey. So please reach out to Aaron if you have questions. Again, acanton@cityofmadison.com. You can go to the Davies Dempsey project page on the city's project portal. Again, you can just Google Davies Dempsey City of Madison and it pops up on the top of the page. Again, thanks for being here, Aaron, stopping by.
Thank you.
This is a first for Aaron on our podcast, so we'll hopefully hear a lot more from him. If you have a question about this project or any topic we chat about on this podcast, please email us at engineer@cityofmadison.com because we're a resource for you every day in engineering.